When you don't take time to look at it through other people's eyes. Take some time and reflect on what you believe in your soul. Cause that is the key to life. You gotta let the negativity go.
Hello, and welcome to the What the Fox podcast with your two hosts, Lindsey Fox and Amber Ross. Here on What the Fox, we deconstruct social norms to build better lives. And today we're going to be talking all about having fun without alcohol, building your own creative energy, and walking your path on your own terms.
I could not have said that better myself. And today we have a lovely guest speaker, which I'm pretty excited to introduce. His name is Justin C.M. Brown. He's someone that I actually happen to know from high school many, many moons ago. And Justin is an artist, a musician, a writer, and an aspiring social theorist. I'm sure we're going to get more into that later.
Oh, I love that.
Yes. And so he was born in aspiring. It's okay. It's all right. We can go with that. And so he was born and raised in Raleigh, North Carolina, although right now he resides in Los Angeles. That's where he identifies as home. And his work in general, which we will discuss and include information in the show notes. His work can be found at jcmbmay.com, emperorsteve.com, and zodiacwaning.com. So we will kind of touch on some of these things perhaps as we move through this topic. But Justin, first, I just want to say welcome and thank you so much for your willingness to be vulnerable and open about sharing your story with us. Sincerely.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I love the podcast, and I really enjoy. I'm just glad to be here. I'm just happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
We're happy you're here too, Justin.
Definitely. And so I think with this topic, this summer topic about fun is very important for us to discuss now in the here and now of July, because this is the peak of when people are out partying, having a good time. You associate 4th of July and all the parties of summer of being filled with alcohol and booze. And that's kind of what you need to have a good time. And frankly, there's a lot of stigma around being a non-drinker, just because frankly, in our society, at least in the US, it's like this idea that you need alcohol in order to have fun.
Ain't it the truth? So, yes, alcohol is something that is very interwoven into American society. I mean, global society, but I think Americans, as usual, we take things in a very extreme direction. Full disclosure, I was an alcoholic for probably 20 years of my life. I am almost 3 years sober now. So I have been on both sides. Thank you very much. I've been on both sides of this argument. I definitely know what it's like to pressure people into drinking, and I regret it. But now we're here, and I'd like to talk about what it's like not drinking, because honestly, it's great. It's honestly great.
Honestly, I think it's amazing that you've made it 3 years, because frankly, your choice to stop drinking occurred right before the pandemic hit, which is actually when alcohol use, substance use just skyrocketed because so many people were locked down and homebound. And so the fact that you were able to navigate sobriety throughout the duration of the worst days of the pandemic is incredible. So not something to sort of sweep under the rug in terms of the level of tenacity and determination that requires.
Thanks. Yeah. So, alcohol affects everybody differently. And so really, when I talk, I can only speak from my own experience. This is what I know very well. And I know that there are people who can drink and it's normal and they don't do weird stuff. And so, this is very specific to my experience. I don't want people to feel judged, because judging people is never a good start in making healthy decisions or anything like that. But I think
agreed.
I think for me, alcohol as a distractor. I mean, I think you see in a pandemic, a lot of people would drink to distract from how scary and bad. I mean, not only was there a pandemic, but the racial justice reckoning and all of that. That was a really intense summer of news, and it's still intense. Don't get me wrong. It's definitely pandemic's still on. All of that's going on. But I think I really learned in the early months of the pandemic how distracting alcohol was. And I I gotta say, our brains are really powerful. And when we sit down to figure stuff out and think about things and think about who we are, we actually do come up with answers. Like it's not some endless journey or road. Like there are answers there inside that you can find for yourself through practice, through meditation, through writing, through creativity, all of that stuff. It's there. You are a person with a personality and like all of this stuff, and so you actually can open up the hood and see who you are to yourself. At least I don't know how you can't control how other people see you, what other people think about you. That's a whole other thing. But when it comes to yourself in your own mind, I mean, as a drinker, I drink alone a lot. When you drink as much as I did, when you're alone, you're still drinking. So I think there's a big distracting element to it. And so while it was a very dark time, and I had by that time I had gotten my footing where everything was scary, but I was like, okay, I gotta figure this out. I gotta know, because I can't wake up scared. I can't go to sleep scared. I have to use this clarity that I've recently discovered at 36 years old. Like,
which you can't unknow after you discover, right? I mean, after
you can't unknow it. No. And once you make it long enough, you realize, okay, anecdote, I still dream about drinking. Like I'll have a dream, oh, I'm in Vegas, and it's like somebody's like, here's a beer, and I'm like, okay, cool. And I wake up and I'm like, oh, I didn't do that. And it really reminds me like how valuable my sanity is, and my emotional stability. Like,
so can I stop you for a second, Justin? Because
Yeah.
I want to make sure that I'm like picking up what you're putting down. Are you sharing with us that you found that you were using alcohol to hide from yourself and from your own truth? Is that kind of the gist of? Okay. And what you've found and what that fear is when you wake up, having had a dream that you drank something, is that a fear that you're losing that connection with self and that ability to kind of ascertain who you are and who you want to be?
Yeah, I think, we're always creating our identities. It's every day, we're what we engage in and the ways that we think, those are our identities. They change every single day. You don't have a week-long identity, you don't have a year-long identity or decade or whatever. It's day to day. It's every hour. And so like not drinking has become a very valuable part of my identity because I see the results of it. I wake up in the morning and I remember everything I did yesterday. I remember.
Hey, that's valuable.
I know it's like, but really though, the anxiety of not knowing how I treated the people around me, which wasn't always great. I'll admit that, and I'm sorry. like knowing that that I was able, and here it is, that I was able to act within my own chosen morals and ethics for the entire day. There was no variation. I did who I say I am, and that's extremely important to me. There's no apologies needed. I want to live a life that I don't have to apologize for.
Yeah.
And drinking,
and frankly, we should all be able to do that, but it's so much easier said than done. I mean, that's just it. Is that so? I just want to take a step back about something that you mentioned around identity and identity construction, because that's something that I personally take great interest in and have for many, many years. And it unintentionally landed me in grad school because this has been my primary focus throughout a lot of research over even in undergrad. But I think in the context of identity construction, which by the way, developmentally, this is like our our brain is like really into that during our teen years. That's when cognitively in the brain, we are like really focused on who we are, where do we fit in the world, what are our values, and how does everything fit, and where do I fit in that? Um, and I feel like, just as a sidebar, because we did go to the same high school, and I do kind of know what circles we each ran in. For those who are not watching, Justin's eyes just kind of got like big, like, yup, I know. And by that, I feel like I can infer what you're saying, but feel free to elaborate. But partying like all hell was the norm in high school for where we went and a lot of the people that we hung around. And by partying, I don't mean like just drinking. I mean, people were partying hard, particularly for our age too.
I think back, I got a job, and like, so I don't need to name it, but like the people who work there, not one of them flinched when I was like, "Hey, I'm 15. This is my second paycheck I've ever gotten. Can you buy me Marlboro Lights and Milwaukee's Best Ice?"
Yep.
And they're like, "Yeah, dude."
No problem. I got you.
And I think about myself, as an adult, like if a 15-year-old, I would be like, I don't know.
Absolutely
Like,
not. Absolutely not.
I don't think so. I don't think so. Like, I can't be involved in that.
Yeah.
I guess it was a different time,
It's nuts.
1999.
Right? I mean, it is crazy though, because really when you think about what it was like for, frankly, whether it be 90s, and then I would say more so, I would say maybe things shifted a bit with the advent of social media, frankly, because then everything became documented in a really public way. We were like, oh
It's
shit,
true,
I
yeah.
can get found out.
Oh yeah.
So it
Can't
did.
be buying kids booze when they go on Snapchat or whatever, and they're like, "Hey, look at what my friend got me." It's like, which
Oh,
friend?
gosh.
Tell us his name.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So it just is very, very different and now. But I would say, just even as and whether it be high school during that period of identity development and beyond, and our brain is still developing until age 25. And even the latest research suggests that it's still changing and evolving by age 30, which is unreal. So when I think about identity development, even for a non-drinker, I feel like our society hyper focuses on how, the traits of that non-drinker must be that they're boring, they're uptight, they are rigid, they don't have a place in the world, and they're certainly not going to know how to have fun.
One, if I can touch on something that I find really interesting about that, is drinking and deciding to stop drinking is the only, I'm going to call it drug addiction or whatever you want to name it, that people say, oh, why would you do that? Like if somebody came to you and said, hey, I gave up heroin, you would not ask them this question. Like
of the why, right? You wouldn't
of the
ask them
why.
why.
Like, why on earth would you do that? But can we stop asking our friends who are deciding to stop drinking why? Like it's a
Right.
weird thing. Like you're allowed to stop drinking. It's not something we've made it too normal as a society, is all I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
girl, I definitely agree. I mean, right, because why can't you just say I'm choosing not to drink because it's better for my health? Period. Or I don't want to.
We got to be real here. Like, alcohol is a key component in socializing people into the meat grinder of American capitalism.
Here
Because
comes the aspiring social theorist.
I'm here for it. Tell me more.
when you have a reliable pillow at home of Jack Daniels, your boss can say mean stuff to you all day, and you come back, and after 3 shots, you're like, I'm okay. Nothing's bad happening to me. Like,
Nothing to see here.
But that's the thing is, why do people drink? There's the celebratory aspect, sure, great, and I really don't even have a problem with it. If you want to drink a champagne, and I do get confused when it's like at the end of the thing where it's like, oh, messy bride falls on dinner table, and you're like, okay, well, maybe too much there, but it's a numbing agent. It's a numbing agent, and the world is not okay. Racism, sexism, capitalism, homophobia, all of that stuff. It is not okay. We see it all day. People being treated badly. And the thing that helps us ignore it, in my world, was drinking.
Yep.
And so how else do you make it? How else do you make it through the day when you see what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, it's very overwhelming. And I think that's sort of where, in my brain, I think of coping strategies, right? Like, what are
Exactly.
coping skills in the first place? And I think if we kind of remove the moral aspect of coping, we can say drinking is a coping skill. Whether or not it's adaptive or maladaptive is another discussion. But at the end of the day, unhealthy coping skills are generally those that provide short-term relief of avoidance to kind of get us out of that here and now feeling, but they are not sustainable for the long run. I mean, so that's why generating new lifestyle changes that generate like long-lasting change of healthy coping to deal with the pains and angst of everyday life is obviously more optimal. But yeah, taking a few shots of that Jack Daniels after work is really like the most quick and easy relief that you can get, right? After maybe for a lawyer who has a very stressful caseload, they're working 100 hours a week, and keeping that stash in their desk is just like their new normal because that's how they get by.
Yeah, I mean, and I love restaurants. I love restaurant servers, but restaurant servers are some like they get off work and look at how they're treated. Like it's people do not have respect for the service industry in the way that they should. I'm not saying everybody, but definitely I think any waiter, server listening to this is like, yep. And you know, you gotta do something. You have to do something. You can't like go home like without drinking. What do? You go home and cry and then go to sleep and wake up again.
Well, and
That's
I think
the kind of
I know you're being dramatic in saying that, but you actually just like sparked a little light bulb above my head. I don't know if y'all can see it. I'm interested, like truly interested when I was reading your sort of Q&A form. What are those things that you have put in the place of alcohol? Because obviously that took up a great deal of your time in earlier years. What did you transform into a healthy or adaptive or, positive coping skill or mechanism?
Well, from a physical standpoint, I still drink LaCroix like I used to drink PBR. I drink probably 10 to 12 LaCroix a day.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
I love LaCroix.
Love the bubblies.
You're
cannot
actually
get enough.
not the first person I've heard, by the way, in terms of that like there's someone else I have talked to who has replaced the IPAs with LaCroix, which is it's so interesting to hear you say this because I've heard people say this before, like it's such a good replacement.
Seriously, it's a 1-to-1. It's a 1-to-1 replacement. You won't even notice. If you're like me and you used to drink PBR and Coors Light, it's literally the same thing. Don't even think about it. They have like 15 flavors. I'm telling you, spend a month, buy every day or whatever, just get a different flavor, find your favorite, play ranking games like, oh, I like peach pear better than key
Maybe
lime.
Oh
some
my gosh,
LaCroix
I
beer
love
bong.
that. That's so funny.
But seriously, there are so many flavors. It's so accessible. And honestly, like in social situations, it gives you something to hold in your hand. It gives you something to buy from the grocery store on your way home from work, because I know people have rituals and they have all that stuff. So you grab it, it gives you something to cheers. They're cold, they're hot. You're, oh, dude, like ice cold, it comes out of the cooler. Dude, great. Love it.
That's awesome. And also, like, as I'm hearing, like, on the heels of what Amber was commenting, right, in terms of some of those strategies or coping skills that you've kind of replaced or supplanted, you mentioned in the Q&A as well about how you don't like identifying as saying, like, I quit drinking because you were not ever hired to be an alcoholic.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I say I stopped drinking because I stopped. That was it. It's not.
And so,
I do like to say I didn't quit drinking because I wasn't hired to drink. So I never made. I don't think I ever made any money drinking. How do
Unless
you
you
know?
were-
Valid question. It's a
unless you
valid
maybe-
question.
I was
Yeah,
gonna say,
those
I don't
Vegas-
know. I feel like back to the
Those
service
Vegas nights
industry
where you
thing.
wake up with more money.
It happens. It
Touche.
happens.
But, So as far as physical replacement, LaCroix all day, every day. I mean, I'll tell you, nobody looks at you funny if you open a LaCroix at 9:30. You wake up in the morning, you're like, yeah, it's fishing day.
Oh my goodness.
It's true.
Nobody looks at you weird. It's
it's-
true. And
Yeah.
I mean, and you know what else is great? You can drink them in the car. You can drink them on the plane. They have them everywhere. It's just, you know,
Something you
the-
don't
the
get in
growth-
trouble for.
Absolutely.
And they can't get you in trouble.
Absolutely.
Well,
Debatable.
So what about beyond physical replacements, right? I mean, like one of the things that I feel like you've highlighted is the fact that you are doing things that have nothing to do with alcohol that bring you joy. So what are those things?
Yeah.
Well, I have a large list of creative outlets that I engage in. As you said at the beginning, I'm an artist, a musician, a writer. I'll get into some painting sometimes, some sculpting. It's kind of whatever. Like, you know, after 10 o'clock at night, like my emails are done. The other thing is reading, and everybody is like, "Oh, I wish I read more. I wish I read more."
Then do
Well,
it.
Yeah, I know a spot in your schedule that could open up. And you know, it's whatever. But I also I started going to school, so that's a good way to take up time writing papers and all that.
Oh, for sure.
But like, actually, the first creative project I did after I stopped drinking was writing Zodiac Waning, which is a novel / screenplay. I say novel / screenplay because I didn't really follow either of the formats.
You are your own person.
It's like
you?
the narrator of a novel, but the format of a screenplay, and that's all available on zodiacwaning.com for free. It's what my blurb on that is, it's biblical allegory couched in surrealist biblical allegory couched in absurdist philosophy told through surrealist dramedy.
I don't even know what that
So
means.
I have no idea what that means, my friend.
Okay, so surrealism, absurdism, and you know, I touch on a lot of things about birth and death and parents and the end of the world. The whole premise is that the world is ending. The stars start going dark, and they're getting closer to Earth, and we're like, oh, this is bad.
Sounds
Like,
highly
just stars disappear.
existential.
Yeah, very existential, very surreal, and it's not what you think. It's interesting, but that is like 270 pages, and I wrote it in 2 weeks, and it was something that I had come up with a couple years before, and you know, this was March of 2020, and I had said to my partner at the time, like, well, we're quarantining, and my biggest fear right now is that I don't make use of this time, because we had no idea how long we were going to be locked down for.
Yep.
So I made sure to make use of the time, and boy, did we get a lot of it.
Yeah. Right. Well, I mean, throughout the pandemic as a whole, right? I mean, as a whole, I think a lot of people who gave themselves permission to, or had the ability, were able to reconnect. I cannot speak to that because my job went into overdrive during the pandemic and still is. But a lot of people did get time off and were able to sort of press a reset button around their own identity construction and rediscovering who they are and what they wanted out of life and what their hobbies or newfound hobbies could look like. So like another, beyond like screenwriting or doing writing in of itself, I feel like a huge part of what I know about you is like with regard to your art, like painting type of art. It's my understanding you have some views around that and how art and your view around perfectionism were things that you sort of explored and kind of teased apart with time.
So And I think I can wrap all this together. The thing about making, I was raised, as we all saw, like the artists of the 70s and the 80s that were popular when we were kids, the Beatles and Aerosmith and Led Zeppelin and all that. It was well publicized that people were drinking and doing drugs, right? Everybody knew. And it was like totally cool. John Bonham died of drinking. Rad, best drummer ever. But so like, I wanting to be a rock star and like, go in that direction. I thought, okay, drinking does that. And what drinking actually does, and I think, not to say drinking is great or anything, but what it does is it shuts off that like judgment where it's like, I'm doing this, right? I'm making it, I'm playing it, I'm doing the thing, right? You don't really worry about if you're good or not, because it's kind of like, yeah, it just like flies out of you. But once you get into a late stage alcoholism, as I did, it becomes that judgment where it's like this constant questioning of your own ability, and not really like, you don't really connect with yourself, so you don't really connect with your art, and you're like,
you're not there, right? You've shut
then,
down all of it.
Yeah.
And then you also throw out like comparison, like drinking and the comparison of yourself and your art to other people's art. Like, I'm sitting here trying to make some thing and I'm like, why don't I sound like Major Lazer? Oh God. Well, because I'm not those people. That would make sense that they make that and I make this, because we're different.
Right.
But there's all these comparisons, and the other problem is when you think you want to make it like that, you look at the most successful stuff and you try to emulate that, and depending on what you choose, it could be very, very far from like your actual identity and the stuff that comes out of you. And that's a really sad thing to realize when you're like, I don't make the art that I admire, and it's like, oh God, what am I gonna do? I can't make Jamaican dance hall bangers because that's not who I am, but that's all I want to do.
Right.
It's difficult, but then
comparison as a whole, right? I mean, really, comparison as a whole, when we're constantly comparing ourselves to whether it's our work or who we are or how we show up in the world, it it manifests a lot of ugliness, frankly, within, and sometimes we even put it out on the outside. And frankly, with you living in Los Angeles, and I'm saying this with great love, but I work with a lot of people out in LA, and my goodness, that is like the land, la la land is full of comparison. So how are you, how does that fit in with who you are and being true to yourself, and exploring art in a way that is true to your identity and not getting hung up with the comparison aspect, especially where you're located?
The thing I found once I stopped drinking was that I enjoyed the process. And I think that's like the most important thing that people, I really hope anybody, whoever it is, enjoying the process and valuing your own creative energy, not comparing it to other people, not saying that my creative energy is bigger or better or more cool or smart or anything than anybody else, but just valuing that I can do it in the smallest ways, in the tiniest ways. I have my book here, and it's full of just random, tiny, small drawings that just come, and I value them. They're tiny, they're little. They take 10 seconds, but really enjoying that process and recognizing that it's a reflection of me, that it's like a creativity filtered through me, and then it all opens up, because everything can be what I want it to be. It doesn't have to be anything but what it is. And that was the problem with drinking, was that I wanted to make stuff that I had observed other people enjoy. I saw it and I was like, okay, they like that, I'm going to do that so that they like me. But once I dropped that, it's that art as a product
Mhm.
Art's not a product. It's not something you can hold. It's like it's the creative energy of humanity, and some would argue like life itself. You know, it it comes with sentience. It comes with memory. It comes with relationships. It's about being alive and knowing that you are.
Yes, and I actually want to just insert one simple word to capture all that, right? And it's mindfulness. Because
Yeah.
right? I mean, all of art is about being mindful. It's about being mindfully here and now and seeing things for exactly what they are, and appreciating that. And in the context of substance use, which is whatever form of substance use and any form of addiction, period, right? Whether it's gambling, drugs, alcohol, sex, social media, you name it, it's an avoidance coping strategy. And so it's to avoid the here and now. It's to provide short-term relief and to avoid all the things that are uncomfortable or unsettling. And so there is no mindfulness. So as I'm hearing you kind of like tease out the contradiction between like playing good music while you're drunk, but it's like it's because you've reduced your inhibitions, so you feel more free and alive, but at the same time you're not actually present in another way. So it's super interesting to hear you sort of process that out. Um, but I imagine
Yeah,
you've grown to become more mindful through your sobriety,
yeah, definitely. And here's a great
and particularly
contradiction.
with relationships as well. I just wanted to.
Here here's a thing that I think is it's a great contradiction, and I think I experienced it a lot. Um, People love to go out and dance, but some people can't dance unless they drink. So do they love dancing or do they love drinking?
Or both.
I would argue that they actually love dancing, but are concerned about criticism or whatever. And so you use the alcohol, you shut off that center of your brain, and then you dance and you really enjoy it because you know what? Dancing is great. It's a
Yeah.
great thing to do. You don't like to connect with music and move your body in a way like it's an incredible thing to do. And
And just a fun fact, it's actually something that releases stored trauma in the body. I mean, it activates
Mhm.
our vagus nerve in our brain. And so it actually there's a reason why we feel so good and free when we're moving and just kind of like going with the flow of things, because it's actually stimulating a part of your brain that's allowing that release to take place. But you're right, we don't really give ourselves permission to embrace that unless we have like that liquid courage
right, and
resistance.
it's the same issue. It's like comparison. It's all like, okay, well, there's always going to be someone in the club that's a better dancer, unless you're going just, and like, and then you also think like, okay, well, I can't dance like Justin Timberlake,
But
but
you
I'm
can
gonna
be
try.
but you can be Justin Brown.
Yeah, so it works out. But it's just like there's that comparison in social settings, and people use alcohol to do it, but it and you get to the joy of dancing, but I'll tell you that you don't need the alcohol to make that bridge. What you have to do is decide that you like dancing, and that's it.
Well, and to
Like,
decide that you like dancing more than you care what other people think about you. Like I've been
yeah,
there. I personally love to dance. It is one of my top 5 like favorite activities. I dance with my children, I dance with my husband, I drag him everywhere, like just it's good fun. But it's not been part of my story to necessarily care what other people think of my dancing, because for me, when I start dancing, and yes, there's alcohol involved a lot of the time, but not all the time. When I start dancing, everything else disappears. Like it's just me, the music, and if I happen to be dancing with a person, that person is often still there with me. But other people's opinions don't weigh on me in that space. And I think that's one reason that I love dancing, because it's always been a place that I could escape to, where the perfectionism and the tendency toward people pleasing and the tendency toward caring what other people think just dissipates. So it's
Which is
interesting,
amazing.
like it's always been that way for me. And I think it goes back to what you said, Lindsey, with it activating part of your brain that just releases the trauma and releases all of that other nonsense. So it's interesting, Justin, that you share that other side of that perspective with me, because that actually had not occurred to me.
Yeah. And I really appreciate your approach to that, and I think a lot of people would love to start with that freedom. But let me just say, there's no such thing as bad dancing.
No, definitely not. It's just dancing.
So it's just dancing.
It's morally neutral.
Yeah. And so, like, even if you're just like wiggling off beat, if you enjoy it, like, the world's not a dance contest. The world's not a dance contest. It's not.
Or contest,
if you enter a dance
period.
contest, expect to be judged. Everywhere else, if you're at the grocery store, you can dance however you want, and it's still dancing.
It's so true. Something I just want to kind of weave in here just before we conclude is just around this idea of, if you could just say a little bit about how your decision to stop drinking influenced the relationships in your life. Like you had touched on, essentially, that is a sigh worthy.
That was a good one.
I heard that sigh, but I'd like to just have you touch a little bit on how has the decision to stop drinking influenced your relationships, because drinking consumes a great deal of time, and we've talked about creative hobbies and how you can kind of, replace some of that time. But what about relationships?
So, the thing that I realized slightly before I stopped drinking was that at that point, and I can't say it was always like this, but I loved drinking more than anything else in my life. Like, more than my job, more than my partners, more than my friends, more than my music, more than my art, more than food. Like, and I can prove that because you can see my receipts. Like, I was choosing alcohol over that. And I had this internal conversation probably 2 days before I quit, which was, if I am willing, it was the number one thing by far. Number one thing I put my love into. And I mean, it's weird to say that because alcohol is not a reciprocal relationship. Alcohol doesn't love you back. So it's like, I'm putting all of this energy and thought and money and time into this, the way that you would a relationship or whatever.
It's a very one-sided relationship.
Very one-sided, very one-sided. And I had this conversation where it was like, if I take this chunk back, I'll have so much more to give to other people and to other things and to myself. And when I realized that I really did love drinking the most. And it's sad because, I definitely missed out on connections and like being myself and treating people the way that they should be treated and all of those things. It's once I was able to take back that time and that energy and everything, I was able to invest myself in the people around me and into myself in a way that everything improved. And I'll say that I was able to recognize people and situations and relationships that weren't good for me, that that I was putting in with all the rest of them. I have my brother and then this other person who's not really that nice to me. And so, like, why I was able to make that judgment where I could really just kind of clean house and put into who and what I really cared about. And
a level of discernment came with sobriety, it sounds like.
It to make a pop culture reference, it was I don't know if you've seen Infinity War, the Avengers movie. Basically, it was like trading my soul to get my soul back. Like the love I had for alcohol, once I let it go, I was able to get myself back. Like like putting down your driver's license as a deposit. You got to get the carpet cleaner back. It's like, okay, you take this and I want me back.
Yeah.
Well, it's like
and sometimes
oh, sorry, Lindsay, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and sometimes we don't even know what me is. When you say get the me back, it's like, particularly if you've started these kind of patterns of abandoning yourself at age 15 to start drinking and smoking and the normalized aspect of partying being a part of oneself, one can argue that you never got to know who you even were in the first place because you had abandoned yourself unintentionally from the very beginning. And so within sobriety comes more than a reclaiming of self, but kind of like a discovery of self, period.
Yeah.
And absolutely. I was going to say, this is like everything you described to me. The picture in my head is like your self-love journey. So like your journey to taking that block away, taking that like alcohol that's just deleting part of you as a human, and learning to figure out who that is and how to love that person so that you can love other people. And I think that's beautiful.
Yeah. And I don't personally see it as like a separation. I don't think there's two me's, so I don't think of it as like transitioning from one self to another. It's that mereological, like when you change things out, is it the same thing? Like if you change the tires on a car, is it the same car? Because it's different stuff.
It's growth, it's learning. You're still the same human.
Yeah,
for sure.
But, it's not, I say that to say, like, I don't want, like, it's not about discarding yourself. It's about giving yourself a better chance to be who you want to be. And the thing is, it's a better chance because it is entirely possible that people, while drinking, while alcoholics, while doing the worst, like they can actually be who they want to be. I'm saying that there's you're giving yourself better odds. Instead of 1 to 100, it's 1 to 10 or whatever, like,
yes, you're becoming the best version of yourself. It sounds like,
well, you're giving yourself a better chance to express the best version of yourself, because it's not just about being, it's about expressing, it's about showing it. It's about showing it to yourself and showing it to others, because you can have all this cool stuff in your head and you're like, and I'm gonna solve world hunger. But if you don't like go out and like talk to people about it and talk to yourself about it and write and draw and do all the things that relate to these ideas, then it's about expressing the best version of yourself, not just having it, because you have it. You already have it. You already have the best version of yourself inside of you. It does not require anything further except to express it. And if there are things in the way of you expressing it, those need to either come to the background or be dismissed completely.
Absolutely. It comes down to, thoughts and actions, right? It's it's living out your best life, the best version of yourself, living out, presenting, expressing the best version of yourself. So it's not just in your head. You're actually, putting the pen to paper and actualizing on these things in the best and most human way possible. So I agree. It's not about discarding yourself, but it's rather learning how to hold yourself in a way that is even your past self with a level of warm, positive regard, and allowing yourself to be loved and held freely to be your best self in the here and now.
Carl Rogers, right?
That was just Lindsey Fox.
Unconditional positive regard. He talks about it. It's fine.
Yes, in terms of that context, but yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm like, yes. I just was shooting the shit, but yes. About positive, unconditional positive regard. Yes, that is correct.
Yeah.
My goodness.
I'd like to, we're talking about having fun and not drinking at the same time. And I'll tell you, the one thing that never gets old, nature.
True.
Like is it difficult to go to a grimy downtown bar and have fun without drinking? I mean, I don't know. Depends on who you are. But I will tell you that, you know, if you're out on a lake, if you're in the woods, if you're camping, if you're not drinking, it creates the opportunity to really appreciate what's around you. And, you know, I wouldn't give that back. Like
It's that
there are a lot of things.
mindfulness.
It's that mindfulness. It's that it's just an appreciation, because it's there's this cyclical thing that happens when you appreciate what's outside. You're able to appreciate what's inside,
That's
and then
right.
it continues that way.
Mhm.
I also want to point out, like, if a lot of people don't consider themselves creative, and that's fine. I will argue that you definitely have creativity in you, and I would like to start somewhere. If you've never drawn, if you've never written, if you don't sing, if you don't dance, if you don't do anything like that, I'm going to tell you one thing that you can do to start, and that is using your cell phone. Take pictures of flowers, because flowers are pretty. You do not have to do anything to them. You do not have to do anything to them. You can go out. There's pretty much flowers everywhere. And so you just take your cell phone and really lean into it. Think about the angle, think about the lighting, think about the composition. Is there 2 flowers? Is there 3? Is there just 1? Do you want to get inside? And that is the simplest way that I can think of for someone who starts from not being an artist to getting into it. And once you're done, look at the photos you take and analyze them, appreciate them, learn about what you did, learn about how to do it better, and move forward in that way. If you're out there and you're not drinking and you're in nature, go nuts. Take photos. Take photos of sunsets, take photos of bugs, take photos of rocks, take photos of whatever. And you know what? People already think you're weird for not drinking. You may as well take photos too. Okay. And
It's true. And it's like, honestly,
Yes.
meditation presents in 1,000 different ways. It's not just
Yes.
sitting there and humming and listening to some kind of music or in silence. Meditation is whatever we need to bring us to the here and now. Some people, their version of meditation is just doing the dishes and zoning out. For
Yeah.
others, it could be while they're hiking and outside in nature and taking photos. I think, again, so much of this keeps coming back to how to bring yourself back into your body of the here and now, and honoring that time, space, and energy of where you are, which is the greatest gift that, every human has the potential to achieve, whether there's alcohol involved or not. It's a
right.
beautiful message that you're conveying.
It's
I
good. This is honestly, it's so funny. We've taken a lot of twists and turns per usual, but what I'm hearing loud and clear from you is, where we started, and that's learning to have fun on your own path, regardless of what society says you have to have fun, or what you have to do to have fun. And if it's taking pictures in nature, if it's dancing offbeat, off kilter, if it's doodling in a notebook, 15-second drawings, I think we can all find something every single day to bring us to that present, to that here and now, and to really appreciate the world around us that we can see and we can feel. And that's what I gathered from what you shared today. So I appreciate that so much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think having fun is a thing that we can do, but I think it's not the ultimate purpose of, like, having fun. If you, like, get to the end of your life and they say, what did you do? Well, all I did was have fun. I think that there are things about valuing yourself, about, like, respecting yourself and the people around you. Like, if you're having fun at the expense of others, like, or at the expense of yourself, like,
Sure.
You gotta
Intention
measure those
matters,
things.
right?
Intention matters.
And you can have both. You can have fun and respect yourself and others. Like, it's possible, but you have to look for it, because the ways that we're currently shown to have fun involve $400 bottles of vodka and boats, I guess.
On Instagram.
Yeah, and so be true to yourself. Be true to yourself, and you're gonna find that that there is all types of happiness and creativity and genuine enjoyment of life beyond the cha-cha slide.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, don't come for the cha-cha slide, man. That's fun.
It is.
Well,
It
still,
is.
I think that you did share a really great kind of takeaway in essence, where whenever we had talked previously, you had just shared that every day is a good day to be healthy and creative.
Yes.
So it's not that one has to choose this, that, or the other. It's both. And I mean, you can be true to yourself. You can care about and have a level of intention. You can be respectful to others. You can choose not to drink. You can be creative. You can have all of these things. And it doesn't have to be any particular day of week or holiday or anything. It's just a matter of giving yourself permission to live out that best version of yourself, so to speak. I don't want to get caught up in semantics, but I think we're all on the same page in that sense.
I think so. Yes.
Well, Justin, thank you so much for to come in as a guest speaker today and just sharing your story. I appreciate, honestly, your level of vulnerability and authenticity and just kind of sharing your story, because I think that it's one that many people either would like to learn how to create their own story, right? Maybe they are kind of navigating some of this because, as mentioned previously, I think during the pandemic, a lot of people started to enter another side of themselves through substance use, that they're kind of at this space now of saying, like, well, now what? Because we're not on lockdown anymore, and we are trying to adjust to getting back to the old way of life. And I think that you've offered a lot of tangible pieces and tidbits, pearls of knowledge, and through your own lived experience of what people can do to kind of ground themselves and rediscover aspects of who they are, or hobbies that maybe once existed or they should consider exploring, and where to start. So I appreciate just your honesty and vulnerability throughout today. It really means a lot. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. Thank you, Amber. I appreciate it.
Thanks for hanging out with us. This was wonderful to hear a little bit about your story, because I know there's like 100 more layers. But thank you, absolutely everything Lindsay said, and thank you for our listeners for tuning in today. Always grateful for feedback, support, and obviously all of the likes and shares as well.
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe.
Yes, please. All right, y'all. As mentioned at the very beginning, we will include Justin's information in the show notes. And again, feel free to check out his website, jcmbmade.com, for more of his art and to learn more about him. So thank you so much. And until next Tuesday, y'all, happy summer.
See you next Tuesday.
Thank you so much.
And we all sing, everything is gonna be just fine. It's gonna fall into place. The sun is gonna set on your terrible day.